Millionaire throws his sick father into the lake, but a German shepherd does the unthinkable. The morning was too quiet, the kind of quiet that presses down on your shoulders like guilt. A gray-haired man in his 70s, frail and slow-moving, sat in the metal rowboat, his eyes scanning the lake ahead. His pale blue shirt clung to his back with sweat despite the breeze. Beside him sat his son, Elliot, a sharp, cold-eyed tech millionaire in his late 30s, dressed in a brown jacket and dark jeans, far too formal for a fishing trip. The older man, Martin, breathed in deeply. "Smells like the same water I used to bring you to, remember? Back when your feet barely reached the edge of the boat?" Elliot forced a smile, gripping the oars. "Yeah, Dad, of course." Martin didn't notice the tension in his son's jaw, or the subtle flick of his eyes back toward the shore, checking to see how far they'd come. It had been weeks since Martin had grown too sick to manage the estate paperwork on his own. "Parkinson's," the doctor said, then a mild stroke. His hand had started shaking. His memory, once razor-sharp, had softened around the edges. And Elliot? He'd been patient at first, but patience has an expiration date, especially when there are inheritances to unlock, shares to transfer, deeds to sign. Elliot had made his fortune young, startups, acquisitions, flashy IPOs. But old money still belonged to his father, and Elliot was tired of waiting. His father's name still held too much legal weight, and Elliot wanted it all, now. "Here," Martin said, handing over the little metal tackle box with trembling hands. "Thought we'd try that old red lure you used to steal from my kit." Elliot took it with a nod, then looked at his father. Really looked. The man who used to carry him on his shoulders now slumped like a shadow of who he once was. The man who taught him to swim, to ride a bike, to work hard, was now struggling to thread a hook, and yet Elliot's jaw tightened. He'd already made his choice. The boat creaked as Elliot stood up. Martin looked up at him, puzzled. "You all right, son?" No answer, just a deep inhale. Then Elliot grabbed his father by the collar and arm, with force. "Elliot, what are you doing?" Martin's eyes widened. "Son, what's—" And before he could finish, Elliot shoved him overboard. A splash rang out, then silence. Martin's head surfaced first, coughing and gasping. His arms flailed weakly. He tried to swim, but his muscles betrayed him. His limbs were too slow, his body too stiff. "Elliot!" he cried out, choking on lake water. "Please, help me!" Elliot stood in the boat, breath heaving, hands shaking. The sound of his father's voice, raw, panicked, pierced something deep inside him. But he didn't move. He didn't throw a rope. He just stared as the water swallowed the man who raised him. And then a rustle from the shore. Leaves crackled. A shadow darted through the brush. A German shepherd, tall, muscular, and alert, stood at the lake's edge. His eyes locked on the struggling figure in the water. Without hesitation, the dog leapt. Martin was sinking, his voice now just bubbles. But then something gripped his shirt, sharp, strong, and pulled. The dog swam with all its strength, paws slicing the water. Clamping its jaws gently into Martin's collar, the shepherd dragged him toward the shore inch by inch. When Martin lost consciousness, the dog didn't stop. It kicked harder, lungs burning, until finally the old man's hand touched mud, then grass, then earth. From the boat, Elliot saw it all. His jaw dropped. For a moment, he couldn't process what he was witnessing. The stray dog, the one the locals called Ghost, had saved his father, and now The dog stood over Martin's lifeless body, barking loudly, fiercely, the direction of the boat. Elliot panicked. He turned the boat and rowed back with shaking arms, heart racing, soaked in sweat. He didn't speak. He didn't call for help. But others had heard. Boaters, hikers, a groundskeeper. Soon people gathered. Paramedics came. Martin still wasn't breathing. But Ghost didn't leave his side. They revived him on the shore, weak pulse, shallow breath, but alive. The crowd cheered. Ghost whined, tail wagging slowly. No one questioned what the old man had been doing in the middle of the lake, alone, with a son who'd vanished before returning too late to help. But eyes started to wonder, and the whispers began. That night, Elliot locked himself in his office. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't explain what had happened. And worst of all, he couldn't undo it. The man he'd tried to drown had been saved by a dog he never saw coming. The media caught wind within hours. Elderly man nearly drowns, saved by stray dog, the headlines read. But locals knew the real story. A man as frail as Martin couldn't row himself that far out. And he certainly couldn't have fallen without help. Someone had to put him there, and everyone remembered who'd been with him. Elliot Wexley, the millionaire, the tech genius, the son. An investigation opened. It didn't take much. Witnesses remembered seeing Elliot alone in the boat, returning dry. Martin's bruised arms told a story. His silent, haunted stare in the hospital bed told the rest. And while the doctors tried to help him walk again, detectives came knocking. Elliot tried to lie, tried to claim his father slipped, but Ghost wouldn't stop barking when he entered the room, wouldn't stop standing between the bed and Elliot, and eventually Martin spoke. His voice was faint, but the words were clear. "My son tried to kill me." It shattered everything. Stocks plummeted, investors pulled out, board members resigned. Elliot Wexley, millionaire tech founder, was indicted for attempted murder and elder abuse. Within days, the same news channels that once called him the Silicon Visionary now showed clips of him being led away in cuffs, face pale, lips trembling. And Martin? He survived. He took months to recover, but he did. And when he did, his first act wasn't vengeance. It was kindness. He bought Ghost a home, not a doghouse, an actual small cottage beside the lake, renovated with heat and plumbing, a handler who cared for him like royalty, and weekly vet visits. "He saved my life," Martin would say, stroking the dog's thick coat. "I owe him more than anyone ever will." Meanwhile, Elliot sat alone in his cell. His lawyer begged for a plea. He refused at first, pride still intact. But then came the civil suits, the breach of trust cases, the testimonies. He was stripped of everything, his companies, homes, cars, and pride. The millionaire who once wore designer suits now wore prison gray. His net worth went from 8 figures to a single toothbrush and a metal bunk. And yet, the cruelest punishment of all? His father lived and forgave, but never forgot. 1 year later, on a misty morning, Martin stood once more beside the lake. Ghost lay beside him, older now, but still strong. Martin threw a small wooden boat into the water, not to row, but to let it float. Inside, he placed a letter, a single note that read, "What we do returns to us. Thank you for showing me, son. I hope someday you see the same." The boat drifted. Ghost barked once, as if agreeing, and the two walked away. And somewhere behind steel bars, Elliot Wexley stared at the ceiling, wondering how the boy who once loved the lake so much became the man who drowned in his own greed, and how a dog became more human than he ever was. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.